Will Canada take gas from the United States? Europe is changing its energy partners. In this video, we'll look at what's behind this scandalous twist, how the global crisis and green energy are changing the balance of power in global markets. It's going to be hot, friends. Don't miss it. For decades, Europe has been heavily dependent on Russian gas. But after the conflict between Russia and a well-known country, everything changed. European countries have imposed sanctions on Moscow, and suddenly they need new energy partners. The United States came to the rescue, which has become one of the main suppliers of liquefied natural gas to Europe. However, now there is more and more talk about Canada as the potential next major player in this market. This is an important issue because if Europe turns away from the United States in favor of another supplier, it could shake up global energy markets, affect American exports, and change key geopolitical alliances. So is Canada really the next important link in Europe's energy mix? Or is everything much more complicated than it seems at first glance? When the European Union imposed sanctions on Russia, Russian pipeline gas flows to Europe decreased dramatically. According to the International Energy Agency, in 2022, Russian gas exports to the EU fell by more than 80% compared to the peak values of 2021. As a result, Europe found itself in a vulnerable position. It urgently needed reliable alternative energy sources. At that moment, the United States promptly intervened in the situation. By 2023, the United States has become the world's largest exporter of LNG, delivering a record 91 million metric tons of gas worldwide. Almost 40% of this volume went to Europe. By the beginning of 2024, the United States had secured almost half of the EU's LNG imports. To cope with such volumes, European countries have urgently expanded their infrastructure, from building floating terminals in Germany to increasing LNG receiving capacities in the Netherlands and France. But there is a downside to this partnership. One of the main problems of American LNG is its price. Given the instability in global markets, gas from the United States turned out to be more expensive than European politicians expected. Consumers felt this especially acutely in 2022, when natural gas prices rose above €300 per megawatt-hour in times of crisis. Another factor is the uncertainty of U.S. energy policy. The course of the American government in this area varies dramatically depending on the administration. One government may actively support the extraction of fossil fuels, but at the same time impose certain restrictions, while another may prioritize clean energy, but promote programs that are regarded as protectionist in Europe. This level of unpredictability makes long-term planning difficult for European authorities and businesses. In addition, there is a factor of political influence. Some European leaders fear a repeat of the supplier-dependent scenario, as was the case with Russia. If the U.S. administration decides to restrict exports or impose harsh conditions in the future, Europe may find itself in a difficult position again. Therefore, despite the fact that the United States played a key role in stabilizing the energy crisis in Europe, many EU countries are already looking to the future and wondering, is there a more stable and less problematic long-term partner? And this is where Canada comes on the scene. Recently, the possibility that Canada could become a key LNG supplier to Europe has been increasingly discussed. But which of these are real facts and which are just speculations? In short, not yet. Currently, Canada does not have operating LNG export terminals on the East Coast. The main Canadian LNG project is located on the West Coast, in British Columbia, and is primarily focused on Asian markets. Thus, the talk that Canada is about to replace the United States as the main supplier of LNG to Europe remains only hypotheses at the moment. However, the situation may change in the future, especially if Europe continues to look for alternative ways to ensure its energy security. According to the official information about the project, the first phase should be launched around 2025. However, gas supplies under this project will be directed to Japan, South Korea, and other countries in the Pacific region. There are no plans for deliveries to Europe at the moment. Nevertheless, Canada's potential in the energy sector is huge. According to the Canadian Ministry of Natural Resources, the country's proven natural gas reserves exceed 2.5 trillion cubic meters. If infrastructure on the East Coast is developed, for example, Through the proposed Energy Saguenay project in Quebec or the planned expansion of terminals in Nova Scotia, Canada will be able to start LNG shipments across the Atlantic. In addition, the route from Canada to Western Europe is shorter than the route from the Gulf of Mexico to the United States. This could give Canada a price advantage in the future. What makes Canada such an important player in the energy sector? Firstly, Canada has rich resources. It ranks fourth in the world in terms of proven natural gas reserves and is also the fourth largest oil producer. This resource security makes Canada an attractive partner for countries in need of reliable energy suppliers. Secondly, Canada ensures trade stability. Unlike the United States, which often engages in trade disputes, Canada is considered a more reliable partner. Its participation in international agreements such as the Paris Climate Agreement and the World Trade Organization strengthens the confidence of the global energy market. Canada is also actively investing in green energy. Already, about 60% of its electricity is produced by hydroelectric power plants, and in recent years the country has been increasing its capacity in the field of wind and solar energy. In the future, Canada plans to become a major exporter of green hydrogen, which fits into the long-term strategy of the European Union to reduce carbon emissions. However, infrastructure remains the main obstacle to Canadian LNG supplies to Europe. The main reason why Canada has not yet exported large volumes of LNG to Europe is the lack of appropriate capacities. The construction of export terminals and the necessary pipelines is a process that requires multi-year investments and billions of dollars in investments. Even if such projects begin to be implemented in the near future, massive LNG shipments from Canada to Europe are unlikely to begin before the second half of the decade. Is Europe really abandoning American gas in favor of Canadian gas? The answer is no, at least at this stage. LNG from the USA still dominates the European market. In 2023, the United States was the largest supplier of LNG to the EU, providing almost 50% of total imports. However, there are changes in the strategy of European countries. Instead of abandoning American gas, Europe is actively diversifying its supply sources. The EU has already signed long-term contracts with Qatar, is negotiating with Algeria, and is considering the possibility of increasing gas purchases from Norway. Canada is also involved in these negotiations, but more as a potential future supplier rather than an immediate alternative to the United States. At the same time, the share of renewable energy sources is growing in Europe. In 2022, solar and wind energy combined overtook natural gas in terms of the number of commissioned capacities for the first time. This was made possible by the REPowerEU plan, which aims to accelerate the implementation of green energy. If renewable energy sources, including wind, solar, and hydrogen energy, continue to become more cost-competitive, Europe's dependence on fossil fuel imports could decrease significantly over time. Interestingly, the main focus of energy cooperation between Canada and Europe in the near future is not LNG, but the supply of critically important minerals. Canada's mining strategy envisions the country becoming a leading supplier of key resources such as lithium, nickel, and cobalt. These metals are necessary for the production of electric vehicle batteries and the development of clean technologies. This is directly related to the EU's plans to create a green economy. In the context of the global transition to electric vehicles and renewable energy sources, European countries are interested in stable supplies of essential materials, and Canada can play an important role here. Another factor that can reduce Europe's dependence on fossil fuel imports is the development of nuclear energy. France is actively strengthening its nuclear infrastructure, and the UK is building new nuclear power plants. Due to this, stable electricity generation using nuclear technologies reduces the need for gas purchases. When it is said that Canada is displacing American LNG from the European market, these statements should be treated with some skepticism. In fact, LNG supplies from Canada to Europe are currently minimal. Although discussions about possible cooperation are indeed underway, at this stage Canada is not a substitute for the United States. In fact, it is not about replacing one supplier with another, but about a broader EU strategy aimed at diversifying energy sources. Europe is striving for a more balanced energy mix, including LNG from different regions, the expansion of renewable energy sources, and the development of nuclear energy. In addition, the European Union is looking for alternatives to the United States not only in energy, but also in the supply of critical minerals, electric vehicles, and technologies necessary for the transition to a green economy. There are several key reasons for this, and Canada may play an important role in the future. But so far its participation in the European energy market remains limited. According to the new requirements of the European Commission, all new cars must have zero emissions by 2035. This means a massive increase in the production of electric vehicles, which in turn requires reliable and stable supplies of battery materials such as lithium, nickel, cobalt, and rare earths. In this context, Canada, with its significant reserves of these essential minerals, has every chance of supporting Europe's ambitions in the field of electric vehicles. According to the Ministry of Natural Resources, Canada ranks 6th in the world in nickel production and has significant but still underdeveloped deposits of lithium and cobalt. Already, European automakers such as Volkswagen, Stellantis, and BMW are entering into or considering agreements with Canadian companies to guarantee supplies and protect the supply chain from geopolitical risks. This is not to say that Europe is not interested in American minerals, but the United States has stricter permit regulations and strong resistance from local residents. For example, lithium mining in Nevada has faced lawsuits over environmental impacts, delaying the development of projects. In Canada, on the contrary, the conditions for the expansion of the mining sector are more favorable, provided that environmental standards are met. Trade tensions between the US and the EU are also playing a role. The American law on reducing inflation provides generous subsidies for electric vehicles assembled in the United States, which the European Union regards as a protectionist policy. This raises concerns that European automakers will be forced to shift production abroad. In response, some European companies are increasingly considering Canada as an alternative partner, as it offers its own incentives but does not create the same trade barriers as the United States. Thus, Europe is applying the same strategy in the field of critical minerals as in the energy sector: supplier diversification in order to avoid dependence on a single player, be it the United States or China. If the United States faces a shrinking market in Europe, it will affect not only the economy, but also the country's geopolitical position. Historically, the energy sector has provided the United States with important levers of influence on transatlantic relations. The United States is not on the verge of losing the European market, but current trends show that staying competitive will require adaptation. Investing in clean technologies, maintaining stable trade relations, and ensuring competitive LNG prices can be key factors in maintaining Washington's position as a global leader. Friends, now I would like to express my opinion. This article shows how dynamically the global energy market is changing and how Europe is balancing between finding reliable suppliers and switching to green energy. To be honest, I'm surprised at how slowly Canada is developing its LNG export infrastructure. With such natural gas reserves and geographical advantage, it could have become a powerful player in the market a long time ago. But bureaucracy, environmental regulations, and billions of investments are all slowing down the process. As a result, it turns out that Europe is not so much abandoning American gas as simply looking for more alternatives, realizing that in the future hydrocarbons may give way to other energy sources. But I was most hooked not by the gas itself, but by the topic of strategic partnership in the field of critically important minerals. If Europe wants to lead in the field of electric vehicles, then it simply cannot do without reliable suppliers of lithium, nickel, and cobalt. And here Canada really looks promising. It is considered a reliable partner that does not create unnecessary trade disputes, unlike the United States or China. I think that in the coming years, it is the struggle for battery resources that will become a new arena of competition, and if the states do not simplify their legislation, they may seriously lose this race. Do you think Canada can become a key supplier of LNG to Europe? Or will renewable energy make importing fossil fuels less relevant? Share your opinion in the comments, like and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss new releases. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.